Last time on the Sean Vlog.
My name is Sean. I'm not afraid to say that this is a very uncertain time of my life, and I figure I can talk through them with the camera and, at large, the internet community. Bit of a nerd, as we're going to cover. 5:15 in the morning is the time for Sean to vlog. Late January 1983, in the town of Hialeah, Florida, which is a little town that's right near Miami. I moved with my mother to the town of Pompano Beach, Florida, which is right near Fort Lauderdale. Deerfield Beach High School, University of Florida. The degree has a technical name that I've never actually understood why they call it that. Makes it sound fancier than it is, I think, but basically it's broadcast journalism. The one problem with my time at UF was that I never really got the message. Experience is actually more valuable than education. I left Gainesville and went to Orlando, Florida. I went and worked for the Mouse. I worked at Walt Disney World. That obviously Disney wasn't working. I wasn't getting anywhere that I needed to figure out what was going on with my life. So about a year ago, I moved here, Quitman, Georgia. Each of these cities is associated with a flower. Quitman is the camellia city. I moved back in with my parents at Full Sail University. It is called New Media Journalism.
And now, the conclusion.
My interests. I have kind of three main areas that I would say cover my esoteric, my ground level, interests, things that occupy a lot of my time. One of those is sports. I am a huge sports fan. My dream has been, I will say this way, to go into sports journalism. That is one of the things I'm figuring out, to be perfectly honest. I need to realize if that is still my dream, if that is still what I am passionate about, or if life is trying to take me in a new direction. And we'll figure that out with time, I say we, you and me and you, the audience that is watching me for reasons that I cannot possibly fathom. But anyway, I've always loved sports. That much I know. And whether I go into the world of sports or I do something entirely different, I will always love sports. As I said, I'm from a town near Miami. My professional teams are all Miami. Miami Dolphins in the NFL, the Miami Heat in the NBA, the Miami Marlins in Major League Baseball, I know, and the Florida Panthers in the NHL, who are not the Miami Panthers because they play in Sunrise, which is near Fort Lauderdale. But I digress. I have one Miami exception when it comes to sports, and that is college. As I mentioned, I attended the University of Florida. I am not for the University of Miami. I love the Gators. Go Gators. Chomp chomp. That might get me some likes, that might get me some dislikes. It's who I am. You're just gonna have to deal with it if you don't like it. Or don't watch. Whatever. Anyway. So, that basically covers the sports. It's my dream to work at ESPN, as long as sports journalism is still what I want to do with my life. Another one of my interests is science fiction. I am primarily a Trekkie. I am a huge Star Trek fan. I'm actually right now in the process of watching through the modern Star Trek series. It's funny, I pulled up Deep Space Nine on Netflix one day. I think, and I pulled up the first episode, I think just because I had a thought about Captain Sisko, or Commander Sisko at the time, and Captain Picard, and I remembered in the first episode you see them together in the same place at the same time, and I wanted to see that, so I pulled it up, and then I realized I'm watching the first episode of Deep Space Nine. Why not? So I watched through all of that, and I am now on, I think it's either season 4 or season 5 of Voyager. I'm actually not sure where I'm going to go after Voyager, because after Voyager, in terms of the show, is Enterprise, which is going like way back in the chronological history. Such a nerd, I really am. You guys are just going to have to get used to it. So that would be a good opportunity. I may watch Enterprise and use that as kind of a chronological springboard. I am actually kind of interested in watching the show in chronological order, and there are people who are nerdier than me and have even more time on their hands than I do that have put that together, the chronological history of Star Trek. My nerdiness in science fiction is not limited to Star Trek. My other main interest, this isn't really science fiction necessarily, but I am a huge fan of the Power Rangers. I got into Power Rangers the same time everybody else did in the early 90s, and I held on to it probably a little bit longer than most people did. I was a fan up until Power Rangers in Space, which was probably like 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 90, probably like 1999. So I was a fan of the show for like 6 or 7 years. Power Rangers in Space kind of just threw me off. In my viewpoint at the time, the Rangers were leaving the Earth and weren't defending the Earth anymore. They were going off into space to fight space monsters. So I was done. Fast forward to college, and one day I'm watching TV, and I flipped to... I can never remember. I think it was called Jetix at the time, and then it became Disney XD and just whatever. And Disney had control of the Power Rangers at this point, and they had a show called Power Rangers Generations, which showed the older seasons. And I was like, oh look, Power Rangers is still on, and it has lasted this entire time since Power Rangers in Space. And I watched it, and eventually it did loop itself around to Power Rangers in Space, and I realized that for a show called Power Rangers in Space, they spent an extraordinary amount of time on Earth. So my worries were not well-founded. I caught back up with the show, and I've been following it ever since. I love it, and I'm not ashamed to say that, you know? People are allowed to love childish things, whatever makes you happy, you know, if that's how you feel, you know, if something makes you happy, then watch it. There are shows that I don't like, that other people do, that I don't know why. I can't possibly fathom why somebody would like some of these shows, but whatever makes you happy. So if you don't want me to hate on you for liking something that makes no sense to me, then don't get on me for liking the Power Rangers, you know? Interestingly enough, liking Power Rangers has also led me into the genre of Japanese Tokusatsu, which is a word that basically means live-action television. Live-action special effects, actually. Power Rangers, in case you didn't know, is derived from a show in Japan called Super Sentai. And they have had basically one team a year, every year since the 60s, I want to say? 60s, late 60s probably. So I started watching that, not from the 60s. Not a lot of that available anyway, but I started watching the Sentais. And they are their own show in their own way, and Japan has its own culture, and it's very interesting. I do not prefer one or the other. If you get into this fandom, you start to realize that there are people who insist that Super Sentai is better, and there's people who insist that Power Rangers is better. They both have their pros and cons. And just like I was saying about other TV, whatever makes you happy. Oh, why can't people just learn that? Whatever makes you happy. I don't know. Anyway, Super Sentai has a show that airs right alongside it, I believe half an hour before. It's either right before or right after the show airs, called Kamen Rider, which is a very similar show. It involves a hero or heroes that transform into an armored form to fight monsters. The monsters don't usually grow big, and the hero doesn't really have any large Zords. There have been kind of exceptions to that, but they mainly keep it on the small level. The stories are a little bit different. But it's another very good show. I would recommend it. The current shows, in case you want to look into them, the current Sentai is called Juden Sentai Kyoryuger, and I'll write that here on the screen because it's rather difficult to spell. And the current Kamen Rider, that's easier to spell, but I'll still write it here, is Kamen Rider Wizard. There are a couple of great groups online that take these shows from Japan and encode them to air on the computer and put subtitles on them in English so you can read and understand what's going on. I think these people are incredible. They do not profit from their work because they are not allowed to. They are not licensed to provide this. The company that makes these shows in Japan is not going to stop them, because them doing this work for them, basically bringing the show to America, inspires people to go online and buy the Japanese toys. So that mainly true for Kamen Rider. There are people who insist that Super Sentai toys are better than Power Rangers toys. They're the same themed kind of objects, obviously, but Kamen Rider, with a couple of exceptions, hasn't aired here. So they go and they get the Japanese toys, so of course they're not going to stop them, but they don't have a license for it, so they are not allowed to profit from it. So they must do this work for absolutely free. And that's really awesome of them, I think, to bring something that we otherwise wouldn't experience here to this country, and really expanding our minds in a way. I've actually even picked up a couple of Japanese words. We don't need to go into a Japanese lesson. I could conduct one anyway. But I've learned a couple of Japanese words. There's a couple of words that I know now, and it's like realizing, oh, I know that from the shows that I watch. Anyway, these groups, one of them is called TV Nihon. Nihon is the Japanese word for Japan. So it's basically TV Japan. The other group is called Overtime. Pros and cons to each. Can go into that later. But I definitely recommend you check them out. In most cases, you will find it best to find a torrenting program to download their things. They have tutorials about that, etc. ad nauseum. I have probably talked about that too much. I am already talking a bit too much. I've been talking for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. My practice video went 50 minutes. But I'm about almost down the list, actually. I'm almost done, to be honest here. But anyway, and the camera's flashing at me, and I have no idea why. But I probably should try to wrap this up then. Just to let you know, I'm going to try to do this on a regular basis, but I have no current schedule worked out. I have no idea if I'm going to do this once a day. Probably not. Once a week would be a little more likely. I think I'm going to try to stick to once a week, but right now I'm not going to make any promises. Like I said, I'm figuring a lot of things out, and I have schoolwork to do and other things, so you know, I'm not going to force a schedule on myself. This is something that I'm doing for myself and for those of you out there who choose to partake of it. So I'm just, you know, it's going to be kind of informal for now. We might get on a different schedule later, but we will see about that. So I'm going to go, because it is late and I should probably be getting ready for bed. I'm a bit of a night owl, as you will learn, but I really try to be in bed before the sun comes up, because once the sun comes up it is very difficult to get to sleep. So I would like to thank you all for watching this initial edition of my vlog. I will also be trying to come up with a name for it. No name as of yet. If you have any comments, please leave them below. If I get any comments, I will read and respond to them, as long as they're nice, in the next edition. And we will see when that is. So, until then, thank you for watching, and have a great day.